Good evening. This is Doc Hatfield, Preacher Man Piper. I'm coming to you tonight to talk to you about the dots on my fingers. And the reason that I am is because I've had several of you ask me about this. And so I felt like that I ought to say something. I thought I had done a video on this, but apparently I hadn't. So uh, let me just tell you the story. I was in the service, in the Army. And I was in Germany, and I had my wife with me in Germany. I was married at that time and had her with me. And we had an apartment, not on the base, but off of the base. And many times, you would be sent TDY, that's temporary duty elsewhere. And so I went TDY this one time, and I guess I was gone for about 2 weeks. And one night, about 1 o'clock in the morning, my captain came in, and he said he had just got there. He said, I don't know if you know it or not, but when you go TDY, the officers and their wives visit the servicemen's wives to make sure that they've got everything they need and to help them get stuff if they need it. And he said, me and my wife went over to see your wife. And he said, today. And he said, and whenever we got there, he named a soldier that was there with her in the house at that time. So he said, now I'm not telling you that the Jeep is full of gas, nor am I telling you that there's a bottle of whiskey under the seat, nor am I telling you that there's a gun in the glove box. I will tell you this. You're not slated to be at revelry in the morning. And with that, I will leave it with you. Well, I got fully dressed because I was just in my shorts and my t-shirt. And I crawled in that Jeep, got the bottle of whiskey out from under the seat and started drinking it, and headed back to where we were staying. We were in a little bitty town called Nelligan. And when I got back to where we were in an apartment up on the 3rd floor of this apartment building. And I pretty much had emptied that whiskey bottle by the time we got back. Now, I want you to know that also at this time, I was in such shape that I could easily bench press 670 pounds. I went upstairs, and before I could even get to the door, I heard music and I heard laughter, and I opened the door. The light was on in the kitchen. They were off in the bedroom and making all kinds of noise. I walked into the bedroom, and just as I got to the door, I looked over, and there was a bottle of whiskey with about that much whiskey left in it. And there was a lamp there that you could pull and turn a lamp on. So I walked over to it, I picked up the whiskey bottle, I turned the light on, tipped up the bottle, and they went to scurrying like rats. He was trying to get his clothes on as fast as he could. I let him do that. She was trying to get her clothes on. And whenever he started to leave, I stood in front of the door. I said, I just don't think this is very kind of you. Y'all are having a party here, and I'm not even invited. I said, I don't think that's right. And so when he tried to go around me, I grabbed him by his shirt here, and I grabbed him by the belt, and without even thinking, I chucked him right out the window. Now, I had forgotten that we were 3 stories up. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just chucking him out the window. And all of a sudden, I saw stars. I turned around and hit whatever hit me, and that was my wife. I knocked her across the room. She had a cast iron skillet. I went downstairs looking for him. And I started hollering for him and yelling for him, and I didn't realize that I'd thrown him out a 3-story window, and he's laying down there half dead. I went down the street. Now, this is the story that was told, and it's the only thing I know. I went down the street, and I would be looking under cars, going down the street, hollering for him to come out from under that car. And if he didn't come out, I flipped the car over. I went down the street and flipped car after car after car after car looking for him. Never did find him. By the time I got to the end of the street, the police were there. They picked me up. They carried me to jail. I woke up the next morning in a cell that was about 4 foot wide and about 12 foot long. And it looked like that it was about 10 or 12 foot high, and it was solid metal. I had no idea what I was doing there. Well, about 20 minutes later, someone opened the door, and this fellow said, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" And I said, "Yeah, what am I doing here?" He shut the door. He come back in a few minutes, and he had a cup of coffee. He said, "Your lawyer will be here in just a minute." I said, "My lawyer?" Well, the lawyer come and told me that we're going to court. And so they took me into a courtroom. Now, in Germany at that time, in the early 60s, where I walked in, I looked down on the lawyers that were sitting at tables down below me, and all the way in the front was a judge. And all of a sudden, the room filled up with people. I had no idea what I was doing there. I heard them saying something. Every time somebody come in, they'd point at me and say something. I didn't know what they were saying. It was in German. And so I looked at that guard that was there guarding me. I said, "You speak English?" He said, "Yeah." "What are they saying?" "Strong man, strong man, strong man." I said, "Well, what's that for?" He didn't answer me. Well, About 30 minutes later, I never understood a word. They didn't speak in no English, none whatsoever. They looked up and they looked at that guard and they did like this. He got me, took me back to my cell. I'm sitting in there and the lawyer comes in. I said, "What is going on here?" He said, "You are charged with destruction of property in the thousands of dollars." I said, "For what?" "I didn't destroy nothing." I said, what are you talking about?" I didn't remember a thing. Well, what come to find out was I was being charged for all them cars I had damaged. And so he said, "Tomorrow is the trial." I said, "Trial?" He said, "Yeah." Well, the next morning they took me in, and in 1 hour's time, they tried me, found me guilty. And so then they took me back to my cell. I didn't know what they'd done, and he told me that they'd found me guilty and that tomorrow is sentencing. I went back the next morning, and when I got there, they sentenced me to 5 years in German prison. Now, they had not one time called anybody in my unit. Nobody. They sentenced me to 5 years. They then asked me to get up. I went around. I went down the stairs, down to where the lawyers were, and there was a guy there. They took my hand, they laid it out, and they put these 5 dots on my hands, signifying that I was going to be in prison for 5 years. I said, "Well, what would have happened if I was going to be there 10 years?" They said, "We'd have put 5 more dots on your other hand." They said 15 years, we'd have put them on the lower parts of your fingers, and on 20 years, on both hands, on the lower parts of your fingers. I said, "Well, what if it's 25 years? He said, 25 years, they put a big star on the back of your hand. Here in Germany, they mark you for life that you've been in prison. You cannot do nothing about it." Well, they sent me off to prison that very day. When I got to the prison, I thought, how they gonna put me in a little old building like that? It looked like a big old yard barn to me. And they took me in and marched me down some stairs, and that's where I stayed. It was never above ground. Now, what happened was that when I got there were already 5 other Americans in there that nobody knew about. Well, I'm not going to tell you about what all happened in the prison, but I will tell you that 1 year later, they come to me and they said, "You've got a visitor." I said, "Who?" "Nobody in the world knows where I'm at." They said, "Well, you have a visitor." They took me upstairs, the first time in a year that I'd seen sunlight, and it almost blinded me. And my captain was standing there and said, "You're a hard fellow to find." He said, "The Pentagon is working now to get you out, and we will be back in 1 week and get you." Well, the 1 week passed, they come back, and they got me out of that prison. So I spent 1 year in that German prison, supposed to spend 5 years in it. So that's where the dots came from. Now, I didn't smoke a pipe in this video tonight because it's real late. I've already smoked about 12 pipes today, and I'm just smoked out for the night. And I hope that this answers your questions, and hope that you understand. So anyway, until I see you again, may the good Lord watch over you and supply every need, take care of every circumstance in your life. I'll see you. Bye-bye.